And we're back. I'll introduce our guest here in just a moment. Let me preface that with this. We are a nation of laws, and as such, we have to use everything in our toolbox sometimes to get from one end of whatever is going on in the courtroom to the other. That means to maintain fairness on both sides, there are rules. Now, you can never tell me and convince me that people in court are free of any nervousness or apprehension. That ain't the case. Both sides are always a little wound tight. But when you take a child into the courtroom, then you got a whole different set of problems to contend with. And here to talk about that today are three folk who are very familiar with a program that's used in Tulsa, and I suspect across the country, because it's a program designed with a child in mind. First of all, Steve Kunstweiler, I'm sorry, Steve, is here, our district attorney. We also have Sally Van Shank and Deborah Cox, and welcome to all three of you.
Thank you.
We're talking about a program that I have to admit I've heard about, but I know a little about, and that's the dog program. That's all I know to call it. What is the official name?
So it's our therapy dog program. We have cases of child abuse, and as you were outlining, it's really difficult when, as a prosecutor, trying to get a child to be able to testify in court. Very intimidating environment. And I've been prosecuting for about 25 years, actually about 20 years, when I ran across a story that talked about using therapy dogs to help women in domestic violence shelters kind of deal with the stress of that situation. And having done child abuse cases for so many years, when I saw that article, I thought that would be the solution to child abuse. Is there a way that I can calm a child in a courtroom through the use of a therapy dog and get the truth out and kind of remove the trauma in the courtroom, make it an easier environment for the truth to come out? And so we started experimenting with that in Tulsa County, and Nala is one of the dogs that we've got that helps us do that. We've been up and running for about 8 years now, and it's a very effective program.
Well, you can see, bless her heart, how tense she is. Just a bundle of nerves being here. So clearly, she's been well trained.
Well, and certainly Deborah can kind of talk with you about it. We first started out with a little dog, a Bichon Frise named Boo. Boo was the first dog in the state of Oklahoma to ever assist a child abuse victim in testifying. That was done in front of Judge Klein. Went to jury trial in that case in front of Judge Glasgow. Very successfully prosecuted that case. And we just kind of built upon it to a point where we were able to get Pam Peterson, who was a state representative, to help us draft a law that is now mandatory in the state of Oklahoma, that if you have a child that has been the victim of physical or sexual abuse, and that child's developed a relationship with the therapy dog, that child has an absolute right to have that therapy dog sit with them in a court proceeding. And certainly Deborah can speak to the number of cases and the types of cases that she's sat and watched Nala do what Nala does best.
Well, and just her reaction with me before we came out here was astounding. I mean, it was like I was no stranger, I was family. I want to go with Sally first before we get down to Deborah. Sally, how do you coordinate the program? What do you do with it?
When a case first comes to our office, it gets assigned to our Victim Witness Center for them to contact the parent or guardian of a child who's suffering some type of physical or sexual trauma, crime. Mm-hmm. They take a look at the case and talk with the parent or guardian and ask them if they would be interested in having a dog available to their child throughout the whole court process. And almost 100% of the time, the parent or guardian will say yes. Mm-hmm. And usually it's a very enthusiastic yes, please, please, please have a dog available. So then I contact one of our handlers. I try to find a handler and a dog that's going to be best for that situation, because sometimes littler children are more comfortable with littler dogs, and sometimes boy victims are more comfortable with a man who's a handler. You know, there's just different nuances to it all. So I try to match up, without knowing much about the case, which dog is going to be most suited for that journey, because that dog is going to stay with that child. That dog is actually in our office before the child even arrives. and it's waiting for that child to receive that child into the whole process. So it's a very tight, incredible bond that occurs almost from the beginning. So then I match them up and pretty much make sure that that dog and that handler is available to be with that child.
I have to be real honest with you. I expected an overweight dog because an animal with this sort of attitude coming through the door, I would think everybody in the world up there is feeding it treats, you know?
No.
So it waddles just a bit. No offense. Look at, she's mad at me
We
now.
have 5 different dogs now, and they range in size tremendously. We have a little tiny one that's under 10 pounds to a great big one that I don't know how many pounds it is, but it's even bigger than Nala. And it's just funny. Some kids just gravitate toward the bigger ones. Some of them gravitate toward the smaller ones. And so the victim advocate who calls the parent or guardian will sometimes ask those kinds of questions. And we do our best to not just give any dog to any child, but we try to really pair it up to try to get the highest level of comfort available to that child as we can.
Golly. Deborah, talk to me about, if you would, the relationship that the child develops with the dog. Do you see it, does it happen quickly with the child? Does it take a period of time? And do you have to get delays in the trial?
Well, of course, at the courthouse there are always delays in the cases and things, but from the minute that those kids walk up and the dog is there, they're all over the dog. They just can't keep their hands off. The whole family gets connected with them. It's a very emotional time for them, and she absorbs that, I think. So the dogs just are kind of unconditional. You know, they love everybody that comes in there, and the kids realize that, I think, and they just connect. Sometimes when they can't talk to other people or to the assistant DA when they're doing the interviews, they can talk to the dog, and it comes out. So it's a relationship that I think goes way past the time that they're in the courthouse with them.
As this dog's handler, does that mean she stays with you 24/7?
Yes, she's my dog, and I get the responsibility for feeding her and paying for her. So, but yeah, all of us are owner handlers with our dogs.
Gosh. Steve, what's the conviction rate when a dog's involved?
I couldn't give you an exact number, but I would say it's very high. One of the things that we noticed at the outset when we first implemented the program, there's a lot of, I mean, you think about it, you got a dog at the courthouse. Most people are just shocked by that idea. And initially, you had the predictable challenges, well, you're using the dog as a prop, or that somehow that child is getting an unfair advantage in front of a jury. But what we've found is over the years, defense attorneys have now come around to understand that there is a value to having the dog assist the child. I mean, if we're true to the process, the whole point of going to court is to get to the truth. And you shouldn't allow attorney tactics or the environment to intimidate a child or any person into being fearful of saying what happened to them. In that dynamic, if we're liberating that child and she is not fearful or he is not fearful, and they kind of look at the dog and they know the dog is not reacting. I mean, you're seeing Nala right now, and that's the way she is in the courtroom. So when something might happen, like an objection, typically, historically, the child would internalize that and think they had done something wrong, and that might cause them to become emotional. Now when there's an objection, they'll look down and they see that Nala doesn't care. And so she thinks, well, if Nala doesn't think that's important, then I'm not going to get worried about it. So there's an empowerment to it. And when I was talking about the defense attorneys, when they see that, what they realize is this: I'm probably going to get that kid to testify, with or without a dog. With the dog, the child's probably not going to be crying. Without the dog, there's probably a better chance that child's going to be quite emotional. And what ends up happening, my fear has always been, is sometimes juries might make emotional reactions, and they may punish a defendant for the fact that that child had to go through all that emotional trauma in the courtroom. So defense attorneys have started to realize there is a value to having the dog, because the dog allows the child to say what the child needs to say without the you know, the emotional impact of it. It's already going to be emotional when a child's talking about being abused, but the fact that you don't have that child being overcome with emotion during their testimony, I think, is a better venue and environment to deliver the truth.
I have to stop you. I don't know what happened, but the time's gone.
Oh my goodness.
It has absolutely gone. Thank you.
Good Lord.
Yeah, oh boy.
Yeah.
Thank you all three very much. And the job you do is priceless. We really are grateful for the program and for having you here to talk
Well,
about
thanks for
it.
covering it.
Thank you very
Thank you for
much.
having us.
That's it. We're going to be discussing the Northeast Workforce Development Board right after this.
Good Lord, that was fast.
It was.